in the Senate chamber of the Honorable Jesus P. Mafnas Memorial Building. And because we have three members and that constitutes a quorum to proceed with today's hearing, I now call this committee meeting to order. To introduce the members of the committee, we have Senator Dennis Mendiola, Senator Paul Manglonia. I'm the chair for Fiscal Affairs, Donald Manglonia. Joining us shortly will be our vice chair and floor leader, Senator Karina Magofnia. Senators Carl King Neighbors and Selena Babauta are excused from today's committee meeting. Assisting the committee, we have our Sergeant at Arms, Ben Terlahi, Fiscal Analyst Dave Damapon, our counsel, Joe Bermudez, our legislative assistant, Jolyn Duenas Tagoba Duenas, our IT, Del Camacho. Good afternoon, members. At this time, can I get a motion for the adoption of today's agenda?
So, Mr. Chair.
All right, motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, public comments. And at this time, I invite any member of the public to come forth and provide their comments. And please, if you have copies of your statement, please provide it to our Sergeant at Arms. And if you can state your name and the entity you may be representing today.
Good afternoon. Greetings, Honorable Senate Vice President Donald Maglonia, Senate Floor Leader Karina Magofnia, and Honorable Senators. My name is Pamela Sablon, Executive Director for the Sinai Council on Developmental Disabilities and a resident of Saipan. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide my comments in support of House Bill 23-35, HS1, to enact a provision to provide tax incentives for employers who hire individuals with special needs. October is National Disabilities Employment Awareness Month, NDIM, and it's a perfect time to educate policymakers on how tax incentives for employers who hire individuals with disabilities will provide more access and employment opportunities for job seekers with disabilities residing in the Commonwealth. People with disabilities currently represent an untapped resource in our Commonwealth and across the U.S. mainland and other territories. Companies hiring people with disabilities will benefit beyond just filling a position. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, they also experience increased productivity for businesses, improved organizational culture, and reduced turnover. Concerns about providing workplace accommodations can worry potential employers. However, these concerns are generally exaggerated. Most accommodations for employees cost absolutely nothing for businesses to implement. By fostering a culture of diversity or capacity to appreciate and value individual differences in all aspects of their operations, employers will benefit from varied perspectives on how to address business challenges and achieve success. Although the term is most often used to refer to differences among individuals, such as ethnicity, gender, age, and religion, diversity actually encompasses the unlimited ranges of individuals' unique characteristics and experiences. As the United States' largest minority, comprising almost 50 million individuals, people with disabilities contribute to diversity, and businesses can enhance their competitive edge by taking steps to ensure they are integrated into their workplace and customer base. In the workforce, perhaps more than any group of people, individuals with disabilities have the ability to adapt to different situations and circumstances. As employees, they add to the range of viewpoints businesses need to succeed, offering fresh ideas on how to solve problems, accomplish tasks, and implement strategies. Hiring people with disabilities can positively impact a business bottom line. Furthermore, by approving House Bill 23-35, CNMI businesses will benefit, as well as job seekers with disabilities residing in the CNMI. Thank you. I'd like to assist Hannah Igisire, resident of Dandan, provide her comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Bonham. Please proceed.
Thank you.
Greetings, Honorable Senate Vice President Donald Manglona, Honorable Floor Leader Corina Magofnat, and Honorable Senators. My name is Hannah Igisire, resident of Dandan, Saipan, and a member of the Voices of the CNMI, Saipan chapter. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide my comments in full support of the passage of House Bill 23-35, HS1, to enact a provision to provide tax incentives for employers who hire individuals with special needs. A part of my struggle and my journey that I would like to share with you would be that, in reality, it's not easy having a disability and restrictions in physical activities. Always living in observation mode. Every morning I have to wait to move, because I have to wait for someone who can assist me with my clothing, assist me to the restroom, and assist with my other needs. Anyway, I don't know why I love to go to school, because being there, always watching, allowed me to dream of what if. What would it be like if I were that kid or another? I admire that they can run around and can have conversations with classmates and others. Just simply having a cup of water that I could hold and drink for myself. To just standing up on my own. To simply walk. That is mental and emotional pain I endure because I can't do what others do, and yet there's so many that take life for granted and use it in unharmonious ways that saddens me. But it also motivates me to continue to grow and try to do more, even if that more is just to lift my finger, to be able to continue to live even if it's just through my eyes. My family and friends asks me what I want to do when I get older. I give them different answers every time because my mind can't stop dreaming. I still remember my first answer, I wanted to be a teacher, and then they asked why I wanted that, because I wanted to help them and it's fun to teach them. Yet, I couldn't read or spell during all my years of schooling. I felt ashamed at first, but that shame motivated me. I was good at listening to my teachers. My lack of knowledge made me feel that it was useless to go to school, and I didn't care for it much, but I felt that as long as I showed up, at least I can learn a little. During those years I loved to ask my mother if she could read any books to me before I headed to bed. Months and years went by, and I decided to work on my reading skills with the Bible, which was what helped me the most. To be honest, I'm still struggling with it, but I'm surrounded by family and friends that support and help me out with my spelling and grammar, which is why I'm so thankful for all the people who have been helping me. 5 years ago, I decided to try to take courses at the Northern Marianas College. I wanted to try it out as I'd heard a lot about it. So, I got in, and during that time, I started in English 71, but I knew I was going to make it through to English 101. I attended classes all year and my tutors taught me lots of things that I never knew, such as past tense, phrases, verbs, and where I should put a comma or period. and how to write paragraphs. Finally, I passed English 101. I want to continue to take classes at NMC, and the staff of the CNMI Council on Developmental Disabilities will help me with registering to enroll at NMC to finish where I left off. Finishing my college degree will help me be more successful in the future. While attending classes at NMC in the past, I started out as a volunteer and ended up working part-time at the Center for Living Independently, CLI. My job duties at CLI were to post daily disabilities-related articles, work on the director's PowerPoint presentations for her upcoming meetings, made tickets and cards for upcoming events, such as Christmas and Valentine's, and create content for CLI. I can't say thank you enough to the director of CLI and her staff for helping me reach one of my goals and increasing my educational skills. I really appreciate you all and your continued support. This work experience opportunity was very helpful. However, I feel that I need more training and education to continue to grow my skills and knowledge with web design at NMC. I will be able to take my experience from CLI, as well as my web skills, and apply it to my new venture. I currently have an IPE with OVR, which helps me obtain the skills necessary at the Northern Marianas College. This takes me one step closer to realizing my dream to become a business owner myself, as a content creator, or finding employment in this field. To the DD Council ladies, I am truly honored to work with you all on this initiative, and I appreciate all your help. In closing, I want to thank my fellow self-advocates and advocates in the Disability Network partners who worked hard to provide their input with House Bill 23-35. The passage of House Bill 23-35 will provide more access to employment opportunities for my peers and I who reside in the CNMI. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Ms. Igizair, for coming in and sharing your comments today.
Buenas and Hofre honorable members of the 23rd CNMI Senate. My name is Eileen Babauta, and I'm the director of the CNMI University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. I stand before you here today in full support of the House Bill 23-35 HS1 to enact a provision to provide tax incentives for employers who hire individuals with special needs. Today, I stand before you to advocate for a cause that not only promotes economic growth, but also champions social inclusion and diversity. I believe in the power of tax incentives for businesses hiring people with disabilities. In our society, diversity and inclusion are not just buzzwords. They are values that reflect our commitment to equal opportunities for all. People with disabilities make up a significant portion of our population, and they possess talents, skills, abilities that can benefit our businesses and our communities. However, they often face barriers when it comes to employment. Tax incentives for businesses hiring people with disabilities can be a powerful tool to break down these barriers and foster a more inclusive society. Here are some compelling reasons why we should support tax incentives for businesses that employ individuals with disabilities. A diverse talent pool. Hiring individuals with disabilities increases the diversity of the workforce. This diversity can lead to fresh perspectives, creative problem solving, and enhance innovation within the organization of the company. Positive public image. Companies that prioritize diversity and inclusion are viewed more favorably by customers, investors, and the public, demonstrating that their commitment to hiring people with disabilities and enhance the brand's reputation. Higher employee morale. An inclusive workforce fosters a sense of belonging among all employees when coworkers see that their company values diversity. It can boost morale and overall job satisfaction. Lower turnover. Employees with disabilities often demonstrate a high level of commitment and loyalty. Lower turnover rates can result in cost savings associated with recruitment and training. Accessibility improvements. Incentives can encourage businesses to invest in making their facilities and websites more accessible, benefiting not only employees but also consumers with disabilities. Economic growth. By expanding the employment opportunities for people with disabilities, we can tap into a skilled and motivated workforce that contributes to economic growth, reduces dependence on social assistance, and increases tax revenues. Human rights and social progress. Promoting employment for people with disabilities aligns with our fundamental values of equity, diversity, and inclusion. It sends a clear message that we value and respect all members of our community. As a developmental disability network partner, also known as the CNMI Tri-Agency and Disability Network Partner, our USET has been providing trainings for the CNMI self-advocates to enhance skills and empower them to implore and determine how to improve their quality of life, whether it be post-secondary education at our Northern Runners College, trades with our NM Tech, employment with OVR or WIOA, become an entrepreneur and work with SBDC, the Small Business Development Center. Some of our trainings that we had conducted, and we've worked alongside our consumers in these trainings, where we provided experience in going to college, which is called the Inclusion Program, and they actually had the opportunity to attend college for first time. Yeah. We've also conducted self-advocacy and self-determination skills, also on employment advocacy, where we also continue to enhance the soft skills that they possess. Future trainings in October in honor of NDEAM, we are providing inclusive practices for businesses and also for NMC faculty. And so we start our trainings on Saipan on October 10, and then we provide the island of Tinian on October 12. On October 13, we provide inclusive practices for student employees at the Northern Runners College. On October 16, we have one more for businesses in the CNMI. On October 27, we provide this training to the island of Rhoda. And then on October 30 is our final training for Saipan. In conclusion, tax incentives for businesses that hire people with disabilities are not just about financial benefits. They're about creating a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive community. By supporting these incentives, we not only provide opportunities for individuals with disabilities, but also strengthen our businesses in our communities. It's a win-win situation where everyone has the chance to thrive and contribute to our shared culture. I urge you all to please support these tax incentives and join the movement towards a more inclusive and prosperous society for all. Together, we can build a world where every person, regardless of their abilities, has the opportunity to shine and make a difference. Thank you, Nsidus Masi.
Thank you, Ms. Babalta.
Good morning, honorable members of the State of the Senate. My name is Dorson Taiting Fung, resident of Dandan, Saipan, and Vice President of Voices of Sinamay Saipan chapter. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide my comments in full support of passage of House Bill 2023-35 H1 to enact a provision provide tax incentive for employers who hire individuals with special needs. I am 35 years old and graduated from Katming High School in 2005. I am a person with a disability with hearing impairment. I currently volunteer at the Center for Living Independently, CLI in Capitol Hill. I've been going to CLI since December 2018. Uh, I am a team leader who trains peers at CLI on skills needed to become independent. Some of the daily living skills training are teaching my peers how to sweep, mop, wipe the shelves, wipe the tables, chairs, and do other household chores. Currently, I'm taking classes at Northern Marianas Island College to learn skills needed to start my own business. It's my dream to one day open a thrift store so it will be a way for me to make money and earn a living. I want to thank my fellow self advocates and advocates in the disability network partners who are here today to advocate for the passage of House Bill 2023 and 35. This tax incentive for employers to hire people with disabilities will provide more access to employment opportunities for my peers and I who reside in the Sinamay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taiting Fung.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to hear us. My name is Carla Sablan. I am the program coordinator for Cinema University Center for Excellence for Developmental Disability. And today I will be reading a comment on behalf of Director Jim Rafen from OVR. Good afternoon. My name is Jim Rafen. I work under the Office of the Governor as the Director for the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, otherwise known as OVR. I am mindful of lobbying restrictions applicable to me and OVR as a recipient of federal grant funds used in the administrations of vocational rehabilitation program, namely that I may not influence or attempt to influence legislations by advocating for adoption or rejection of proposed legislation. I am not here to do either. That decision is, of course, best left up to you. Rather, I come before you to share some stark realities about the employment of people with disability. I'd be remiss not to note that last week our governor and lieutenant governor proclaimed the month of October as National Disability Employment Awareness Month as a reminder, among other things, of the valued contribution people with disability make our nation's workplace. Welcoming the talents of all people, including people with disabilities, are a critical part of our efforts to build an inclusive community and strong economy. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, these are the most current figures I could find. As of August 2023, the unemployment rate for people with disabilities was listed at 7.9% versus 3.8% for their non-disabled peers, more than double. Locally, of 193 individuals who sought VR services in FY 2023, only 31 were or have been employed, somewhere around 16% for emphasis. That's just people with disabilities who sought and were deemed eligible for VR services. Oh, let's see. Employment of people with disability is not commonplace for a variety of factors, and yes, in many cases due to lack of will from employers. Despite the countless examples of people with disabilities being excellent employees, they still have to contend with prejudice and discrimination even from employers. The point being that anything this body or anybody can do to incent employers or entice them to think twice before dismissing the possibility of hiring someone with a disability would be a good thing. I'll end by saying that our disability network partners stand in solidarity around the common mission of helping all people with disability to achieve their employment goals, live independent lives as contributing members of our community, and in support of the general quest for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you for letting me share this.
Thank you, Ms. Sablan and Mr. Rayfan.
If I may share comments from Ms. Leila Staffler, Secretary of Labor. She had a conflicting engagement. She's unable to be here, but she provided comments for me to share on her behalf. This letter is dated October 2nd, 2023, to the Honorable Edith De Leon Guerrero, Senate President, 23rd Northern Marianas Commonwealth Legislature, Capitol Hill, Saipan, MP 96950, regarding letter of support for House Bill 23-35 HS1. Hafade Zentiro from the Department of Labor. This is a letter of support for House Bill 23-35 HS1 with the intended purpose of providing incentives for employers who hire individuals with disabilities. It is widely known that hiring people with disabilities provide multiple social benefits in the workplace, such as retaining valuable employees, improving productivity and morale, reducing workers' compensation and training costs, and improving company diversity. While there are many social benefits for hiring people with disabilities in the workplace, by approving this bill, the 23rd legislature will ensure that there are also added economic benefits for both the businesses who invest in this part of our population and the employees who choose to disclose that they have a disability to their employer. At this time, because the CNMI is not a part of the U.S. enabling legislation set forth in the Wagner-Pfizer, we cannot participate in the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, WOTC. The WOTC is a federal tax credit available to employers for hiring and employing individuals with disabilities and other identified groups who have faced significant barriers to employment. There is also a body of research that shows the majority of workplace accommodations cost almost nothing to make. Of those that do incur a cost, the typical one-time expenditure is $500, which likely can be covered by the support of partnering agencies like OVR or Assistive Tech, who are designed to support exactly this type of need. By approving House Bill 23-35 HS1, this legislature will give businesses an opportunity to benefit from their efforts to increase diversity in the workplace or workforce by being able to claim tax credits, especially in these challenging economic times. With respect to the CNMI's labor's role in certifying requests in collaboration with CNMI Revenue and Taxation, we are ready to meet the challenges ahead for the betterment of inclusivity in the workplace or workforce and in preparation for one day being part of the Wagner-Pfizer system of employment services. Sincerely, Leila Staffler, Masters of Science in Education, Secretary of Labor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sablan and Secretary Staffler. Floor is still open. All right, if there's no one else, I just want to also state for the record that we received comments from the Secretary of Finance in regards to House Bill 2356 and also from Administrator Epi Cabrera from Office of Grants Management and State Clearinghouse on House Bill 2356. All right, if there's no one else from the public wishing to make comments today, I hereby close that portion of the agenda, and we now move on to new business. Well, I know we have several bills We have 5 bills under new business. I guess for the sake of those who testified today on behalf of House Bill 2335 HS1, if there are no objections from the members, can we move to that section of new business? All right, if there's no objections at this time, I open the floor for members to discuss. But before we do, council, earlier, just to clarify, under page 3, line 4, or starting from line 3, the tax credit shall be capped at 4,000 for the tax year it is claimed, inclusive of all employees who are eligible. So just to clarify, this would be a cap of 4,000 for the entire corporation, despite, not without any limitations on the number of employees that they hire.
And the answer is yes. If it exceeds, if they have a lot of employees and it exceeds the 4,000, it's capped at 4,000. But they can work from between 0 to 4,000. I ran some numbers, and I don't know, maybe Dave can see whether I got this wrong. But if an employee makes $7.25 an hour and it's a full-time employment, that's 80 hours. And if you take 40% of that, it runs around $232. And that would mean that a company can go as high as 17 employees to max that cap. So the way the bill is written, it's per person, the 40%, and a cap of 4,000. So the amount for the tax waiver would be just depends on the number of employees.
So this is 4,000 per employee, inclusive of all employees who are eligible. It's
I
kind of vague.
I don't read it that way. I read it that 40% is the amount per employee, and it depends on number of employees. It's multiplied by that, the wages of those employees, 40%, and it's capped at 40,000. I guess we can make it. I don't read it as 44,000 for each employee, because that's a very high number for if it only pertains to one employee. Like I said, I use $7.25 as a minimum wage, 80 hours, and it only comes out to $232 for that one employee. It would
Mr.
take
Chairman,
17.
the way I read that is if a person makes 1,000 a month and it's 40%, right? So that's
400.
$400 a month. So after 10 months, that's
No.
4,000. That's
For
how
the-
I read
no,
it.
but it's for the year though.
Yeah, for the year, and then the following year they can still do the same thing again, and that's per employee. That's my understanding, which appears like it's reasonable, right? Because then it's only until after so many years that the cap shall increase 1,000 for each tax year thereafter.
Yeah, but the issue that we may see is in year 6, you're talking about 10,000 per employee times, say they have 10 employees, that's 100,000 in tax
No, 10,000 is the cap, right? So,
per employee after 6
so
years.
10 employees is 100,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Recognize Vice Chair.
I don't think it says per employee. I believe it says the cap shall increase by 1,000 for each tax year, not necessarily,
Per employee, right? It's
yeah,
not.
it's not, I don't see the per employee, it's just per tax year.
But I think council kind of he's
Line
reading it
4.
as though it'll be 4,000 per employee.
Inclusive of all employees. So it's not per employee, it's
All
all.
per corporation in this case, per
I think,
entity.
yeah, I think it's.
So it's 4,000 per entity.
Anyway, I yield, sorry.
Okay.
No, thank you. Senator
So,
Fong.
while we still have the people that commented, can I ask, in the federal law, how do they define people that are disabled? Is this something that we can clarify locally so that it's not abused by those that do not fall under this definition that you are assuming will be implemented? Is there a definition? Yeah, definition.
I believe they included the definition per the Americans with Disabilities Act. And also documentation that will be provided, to Department of Labor as well, to qualify for this tax. There should be documentation provided.
Recognize Senator Mendiola.
So I think, so I was looking at this same subsection D, page 3. So I read this: the Secretary of Labor, in collaboration with the Division of Revenue and Taxation under the Department of Finance, shall have the authority to certify. So I was kind of thinking of trying to maybe change the language on that and just leave it with the Department of Labor and promulgate the qualification and criteria based on the American with Disability Act. So that way there's no going back and forth on the definition.
So you're
Because-
saying just have labor
Department of
certify
Labor,
and then
because this is their sole
companies could
responsibility.
take
Really
that
is.
certification
Yeah.
to.
Their sole responsibility is the protection of our labor force. So rather than in collaboration with the Division of Revenue and Taxation, because the Division of Revenue and Taxation should be responsible for promulgating the tax bracket and all that stuff.
Thank you.
So for me, just leave it with the Department of Labor in according to the American Disability Act. So that way, all the definitions already in that act, and nobody. So, because I see a problem, right, going back and forth between labor and division of or the finance on the definition, it may lead to more issues for the employees. So I was just thinking of just.
I think, excuse me if I may, the reason why the language is reflected that they're working with revenue and tax because of the documentation, tax documentation. They're the ones that receive all, the tax forms. So they have to work in collaboration with each other. Labor will vet the employer and then, certify. So, and working with tax and revenue so they could get the tax credit.
I get it, and that's why I'm saying that just
Yes.
separate the two language and just have labor deal with the qualifying entity, and then have division of tax deal with the taxation. Just changing that language and just making it two separate tasks within the language of the law. It's just a recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Mendiola. Ms. Pam, I hope you don't mind us
Okay, thank
questioning you while
Oh,
you're
no.
here. There's no registry as to who are how do I say this? Like, rather than have a yearly certification, is there like a registry as to who may qualify for benefits?
Well, it's just dependent upon the employee if they disclose, because that's up to them.
Right.
If they disclose that they do have a disability and require accommodations. So this is just an incentive for businesses to get a tax credit, for providing accommodations and increase opportunities. There's no registry because it's, dependent upon if they want to disclose.
Right.
But we want to promote this as an incentive to increase more employment opportunities. So that is one issue, and then this is also being dealt with in the U.S. mainland. But educating employers and people with disabilities. If you do disclose, it's a win-win for both parties. Be provided an accommodation, and employers will also have a benefit,
Okay.
increased
Thank you.
benefit for hiring. So that's basically, there is no such registry
Right.
to date.
But is something like, for example, someone who may have applied for a placard for their vehicle, or, like
So
like a
so this is also an incentive for individuals who go through the OVR for assistance, because you would have to be deemed eligible to receive the services. So we find that OVR also will benefit to place their clients. They provide those trainings, and also on the job training. They work with employers, but at the end of the day, sometimes these employers do not hire or continue to employ these individuals. So, those clients of OVRs, the vendors, will also benefit.
Thank you. Sorry,
Thank you.
before I open up to the members, just one more question. Did you assist in the drafting of this
So
legislation?
this bill actually was a bill that was written by former Congresswoman Leila Staffler, and input was given to and was reintroduced by Representative TJ Manglonia. So a lot of the information in this bill was her original bill, and just slight changes with the definition to replace Social Security definition of disability to aid the Americans with Disabilities Act definition.
But do you know if the intention was for it to be a 4,000 per individual, or is that something that you would
I think
have
it
had
is
discussions on?
this. I believe it was for the corporation, max for not per individual. I really didn't get the details regarding if it's per individual, but my understanding was for the
It's
corporation.
for the corporation. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I recognize any members. Senator Mendiola.
I just wanted to talk to Ms. Sablan. So I don't think anybody's against the bill. Honestly, I think my colleagues and I can, relate. This is something really good. It's beneficial to the community, especially our citizens that are looking forward to the employment. I think the deliberation here is really just to make sure that the language is clear, so that
Yes.
nobody gets hurt down the line in terms of not unclear language in the law. So that's all. I just want to make sure that I iterate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yo.
Thank you, Senator Mendiola. I recognize Senator Paul.
You mentioned about this bill trying to help employees who face barriers. So I think the key word is barriers, right? And so for that reason that we have to, this is it's a good bill, but it might lead to companies abusing it, because there might be employees that they're already hiring, or that they could easily just hire. But then they see this, then they take advantage, right? They don't really need this, but they might take advantage. And so I think somebody has to, when they certify them, they must show that, they face barriers, right? And so these are the ones that we want to help.
Yes.
We want to give opportunity, not ones that have already been working 10 years and all of a sudden they see a law like this, they try to apply for the tax credit, right? We don't want that to happen.
So I believe that the intention of when this bill was introduced, that rules and regulations would be developed or established with that in mind, so there is no abuse. The Secretary of Labor now, she did mention that she does have enforcement officers. So the rules and regulations would spell out their duties and as well as revenue and tax. And this information would also be shared to those employers that are availing of this tax credit. So, guidance, rules and regulations should come to provide guidance to this law, enabling law, or if it's passed, yes.
One final question. In Guam, they have this program where they have this. I don't know if it's still ongoing, but I remember in the old days, they have this facility where they bring some of these people facing barriers, right, in finding employees, and they make them do various stuff, and then they sell their products, different products, and they also work in the office and what have you, and that's one way of making them do something meaningful and have employment, get employment. Is that something that we're doing somewhat at CLI or?
Well, CLI
someone-
actually, they are having a ribbon cutting ceremony to open a training and a resource center. And that training and resource center is going to help their clients or consumers, gain the necessary skills to become independent, to learn skills if they wanted to work or be employed or open their own business. So that's one step in that direction. That's yes. It's based on choice. So it depends on the individual choice. If they want to open a business or be self-employed, they can access OVR services because that is one of the areas that they do assist people with disabilities. That if they wanted to have supported employment or open their own business or gain those skills necessary. So there's just increasing more options for people with disabilities and choice.
Thank you. Dave?
Just want to
Yes.
clarify your statement about the threshold for this tax credit.
Mhm.
For example, we know that it's to benefit the employer, right? Because the employer will normally have a tax liability, and with this tax credit, it will lower its tax liability down. What my question is, and I would like to clarify with the members here, is that is this only per employer? And if it is, so say for example, this employer A hires three, employees of this kind of situation. Would this employer be eligible only to the extent of 4,000 tax credit per year?
I think the law did talk about that per year, and it increases by 1,000, right, per year up to 10 years with a max of 10,000 in the law per corporation or business. So I think the intent is to provide those tax credits to increase more options, expand opportunities for companies to hire. I know it's very vague with the legislation not really clarifying whether it's per individual or for one company to hire a number of individuals. We'll just start with the company that hires, a number of people. 4,000 would be their credit per year, and then with an increase of 1,000 in the year thereafter.
Yeah. And one more chair. And what would happen if the amount of the tax credit is not used up for that year? Would it be carried forward to the next fiscal year? Next year for the employer? Let's say, for example, it ends up to be 4,000, for example, no, the threshold. But this employer does not use it up to 4,000 and it leaves about maybe 1,005 for that year. Would that unused portion be carried forward for that employer to benefit for the next following year, or it just dies in that on that year?
I know it's not very clear. That's one area it's quite confusing. but I believe it's just 4,000 for that year, and then the next year thereafter would be increased by 1,000, and that's how I understand it. I don't believe that's going to be carried over.
Thank you.
It
I
didn't
think
really
that would
specify.
need to be clarified
Yes.
if that's the case. It's
Mhm.
per tax year.
Yes.
Recognize Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that that would be very essential to, especially during tax filings, to arrive to see if there would be carryovers, because and some of the tax laws it does allow for carryover, and so I think it would be very important to spell it out on this bill whether or not the business can carry over the unused portion of.
Would it be? I mean, where it states 4,000 for the tax year it is claimed. Would that does that still need to be clarified in the sense where there's no carryover?
I
I
think
think
I think, Mr. Dimapan, please do correct me if I'm wrong, but you know how sometimes, so the cap is at 4,000 per year, right? And let's say this company just happened to hire 10 disabled employees. Because I don't know if it's clear if it's per employee or is it just a cap as long as the company reaches that $4,000 mark, then anything beyond that is ceases at that point where this I think this is where that question becomes whether or not they can carry over, right?
well, yeah. I think
Because if
maybe
it's being calculated per wages, right? And if you have 10 employees, that's 10 different wages, and so uh, you know within a year it could exceed more than $4,000. And if we don't spell it out on this legislation whether or not they could carry it forward, then that's kind of like a disadvantage to the company. But if not, then but I think we just need to be clear
Clear
on
on-
that so
okay.
that there's no ambiguity.
Yeah.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I recognize Senator Mendiola.
Likewise, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify, like, really why 40% or 4,000 and 10,000? What's the magic number there? Like, I'm just kind of curious on those. Is this like the tax norm, or is there a bracket in taxation? And I'd like to ask that really to the individual that wrote the laws. Why that number? And another question that I have is, so let's say the employee is hired for that fiscal year or for that year where you claim the tax. Let's say in between, for unfortunate reason, the employee resigns or moves on to other jobs. How do we carry that, or how do we break that down by month? So just some of the questions that I want to make sure that we clarify on just the tax bracket, because I think if we push this over to finance, I think it's going to be a lot of questions coming back to us on this manner that we're asking in this chamber. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Well, I think 40% was a number they threw out based on the status of some of these employees, whether they're part-time or full-time, and that the yearly increase is an incentive to continue to employ these same individuals, because any new individual, before they qualify for the tax incentive, must be employed for 9 months. And so just having that employee continue their employment would provide as an incentive to keep them, to try to get that up to that 10,000 cap. You have to work for 9 months just to be eligible for the 4,000, and then each year thereafter is an increase in 1,000. I think what we can clarify is that this is for 4,000 for the entity per tax year. I mean, I have no issue with 40% of the wages. I mean, even one individual at a full-time, 40% is more than what the cap is, but because there's a cap, we leave it at 4,000. And so this would incentivize also assisting more individuals at a part-time basis, if that may be the case. And so I think if we're gonna do that, we should clarify it in just that lines 3 to 5, right? I recognize
Yeah,
Vice Chair.
I think we really do need to clarify the intent from the author of the bill. If you look at the CNMI's education tax credit, it's clear that it's 5,000 per taxpayer, and in this case, it's kind of either, right? So I think it would be good to clarify that with the author. It's cleaner.
Which portion? Clarify which
The
portion.
four
Sorry.
thousand or the 40%. Because it says here a non-refundable tax credit of 40% of the wages paid to such worker against the tax imposed on the total gross revenue, and then that's section A, and then section B it talks about the $4,000 cap.
Right. Well, I think that the 40% works on those that are employed part time because they won't meet that cap.
Right. Okay.
And so whatever the part time employee makes, it will be taxed at a 40%
40%.
rate. And then anyone who's working full time, you can't really apply the 40% because they'll be making up to 6,000 even at minimum wage.
But-
And so there's a 4,000 cap on.
Sure, but that's on the assumption that that's only one employee. Like, what if you have 10 employees
Right.
that are
So
working
I
part
think
time?
the one where we can clarify that this would be a 4,000
Cap
for the
overall.
corporation,
Got it.
for the entity.
Already by saying inclusive of all employees who are eligible on line 4, it says
Line 4 and 5.
Yeah. So one thing we can do is 4,000 per tax year instead of for the tax year. At least I would know that will be the cap for per tax year per. What's the right term? Per
for
employer.
employer. Yeah.
It is claimed. So 4,000 per tax year per employer. It is claimed. Inclusive of all employees who are eligible. So would you say that that language encompasses the overall? All right. I move to amend that line to include language or to substitute language on line 4. Substitute for the tax year and replace that with per tax year per employer. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. All
Aye.
opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Any other concerns? I think maybe that in regards to Senator Mendiola's recommendation on line 12, should we just leave it with the Secretary of Labor to make that certification that this
Mr. Chair.
recognize Senator Mendiola?
Proposal. My proposed language really, I'd like for it to read Department of Labor shall promulgate the qualification and criteria to be certified based on the definition in accordance with the American with Disability Act of 1990. So it's just one entity.
So
That's
remove.
if everybody wants.
So basically, remove in collaboration up to Department of Finance. Strike that out.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Any objection from any member? Can I get a motion for that?
So
All right, a motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Council with the effective date, should we indicate, or is it just common practice that regulations will be promulgated within? Should we?
Not really. Maybe it's better if we put it in there as a new section, because it's not always done. Even the ones that we say do it, they haven't done it. So I think it's better to put it in.
So how many months do you think the members? How many months do you think? Is there a norm? 6 months. 90 might be too. I think the 6 months would allow for Department of Finance to change their forms as well, and then allow for the comment period from the public for any of the proposed regs. So adding a new section that would allow for Department of Finance and Department of Labor to promulgate regulations that would apply to this act. What section would that be called?
Just make it a new section 3.
Titled Rules and Regulations.
Yeah.
All right, members, I move to add a new section and replace, push down section 3, and the new section would be to provide Department of Finance and Department of Labor 6 months to promulgate rules to effectuate this act.
Second.
All right. Any objection from the members? No objections. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right, members, we're back to the main motion. We have House Bill 23-35, HS1, SS1. Discussion on the bill.
Ready.
All right, can I get the motion for the adoption of HB 2335, HS1, SS1?
So move.
All right, a motion was made and seconded. Can I recognize the LA to take roll?
Senator Karina Elmagofnia,
Yes.
Senator Paul Evangonia, Senator Dennis Manjola,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, 3 members present voted yes.
Thank you, Jolyn. With all 3 members currently present voting yes, House Bill 2335, HS1, SS1 is hereby adopted. And if I can ask the LA to prepare the committee report so that we can address this at the session in which, or if we have time to address this at our next session. And so at this time, thank you to everyone that's present here today that provided comments as well as showing their support for House Bill 2335.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean,
Thank you so much.
thank you, Ms. Savlan, and everyone else present here today. All right, members, we now move back to House Bill 23-98 HS1 to require legislative appropriation for all non-locally sourced funds allocated for the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. Discussion on the bill. If I'm not mistaken, the vice chair was, this was previously introduced in the House last term. Recognize counsel.
Senator Paul, before he left, he told me to share his concern on the bill. And it's basically on the definition under section 101. And if you read section 101, it talks about what's the definition of the 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 term, what's the term?
All funds exclusive of general fund.
But then if you go to section 102, it kind of like provides a little definition where it says uh, the term not limited to. And I think that one should be in the definition. His concern is he wants to include in section, either in section 101 or 102, but I think it should be in section 101, that benefits, for example, cash donations that are made by private company to the office of the governor, community benefits, community chest benefits, especially if it's in terms of cash that is provided by an investor, should also be subject to the appropriation by the legislature. For example, I guess IPA is one prime example where I think they were providing like, is it 10 or 15 million community chest fund, and we don't know what that was, totally under the discretion of the governor and the investor. So that was his concern, that it should be included somewhere in the definition where it fits, to include those cash donations and those cash community benefit provided by the investor.
So it's just moving that section of 102 up to 101.
No. I think we just need to tweak the 102 a little, because that's where it says not limited to. I think that should be part of the definition, where it says not limited to, and then just describe the. Made some notes like in section 1, including but not limited to cash community benefit provided by the investors or those funds, and then continue with those funds originating from the U.S., et cetera, et cetera. But somehow put in cash donations and community benefit in forms of dollars provided by the investor. I think it should be in the definition, because it says, it kind of provides this non-locally sourced funds shall mean all funds. Then there's that exception. But then if you go to 102, that's where the term says not limited to. I think it should be in section 101. Not limited to whatever we want to put in there. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe section 102 is not necessarily just merged.
Yeah, there's already says all funds.
Yeah. Maybe merge the two or something.
Recognize Dave.
In these types of transactions that we're dealing with, for example, we have to be mindful about the connection of the source between the two parties if there's an agreement. For example, if it's zero funding and this federal grant is connected with a grantor and grantee, I think, on my own view, this body will not have to worry about that type of transaction because there's a mutual understanding as to how the
Yeah.
fund's going to be
Well,
used.
there's an exemption.
Okay,
So it says any funds provided directly to specific grantees
okay,
under the terms and conditions of a
Okay.
federal grant.
okay. Yes, sir. And then the other thing that I would like to share is that would these types of funding or types of sources be eligible for the PSS sharing of that 25%? you know, and
I don't. They're not general revenues,
they're not general
so it
revenue.
wouldn't be considered general revenues,
Yeah, just want to clarify. Yeah, thank you.
right, Council? They're special revenues.
It's always a special revenue, provided that the source of the fund and
Is
how
for
the fund is going to
directly.
be used has a connection, nexus. That's how the Supreme Court defined special revenue.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would be general revenue.
Recognized, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So for instance, when we receive funds for CARES Act and COVID, right? There's some specificity as to how the money were to be spent, but then there was also that wiggle room for how the money can be spent. And this is part of the reason why we came up with this legislation, is to ensure that, like with the COVID, right? Some monies were used to provide the stimulus. Some monies were used for whatever the choices were. So the intent of the bill at the time was to ensure that the legislature has a say in how these awards are appropriated.
Right. For example, if we look at your example, and I think under the funding, there's like 3 or 4 categories, and if let's say category 4 says for pandemic or whatever, and if you use the money for that purpose, then that's special revenue. If category A says it's for the helping out the businesses that were affected, and you have that boost program, and it's to help those businesses that were really affected during the time of the COVID, then it will be special revenue. But it's got to be a connection. As long as there's connection on the source and how it's used, it would be special revenue, and PSS won't complain.
Recognized Senator Mendiola.
I guess, Mr. Chair, my only issue with this is that depending on where you stand, whether you're in the legislative branch or the executive branch, appropriating these funds can lead to, I guess, roadblocks. Especially, so I'm going to use the COVID-19 for example. No, if we were granted, for example, the ARPA money, and we had to wait for the legislature to appropriate that funds before the executive branch can execute any security measures, for example, it could lead to a disaster, if you ask me, in my opinion. And I use this with the COVID-19 because when COVID-19 hit, nobody really knew what to do with COVID-19, right? It was a new disaster that we were facing. And you move funds and you execute the executive branch for the safety of the community as fast as you can based on what you know. The problem is that now if I have to push this money to the legislature to appropriate that fund, and let's say, for example, the House and the Senate don't agree, it could lead to further delay in executing those services. So I just want to caution, I just want to put that out as a cautionary measure, because I sat in the executive branch and I saw the delay, I saw all the issue, and it's based on interpretation. People can interpret that you're doing this versus what you're actually trying to do. So I just want to put that out there as a cautionary measure, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mendiola. I think when I don't know, maybe I think it's because of these disasters that we've had in the past and where we're at today. I think it would be wiser for the legislature to take a more active role in ensuring the accountability of how these monies are spent in terms of, and so, I mean, I'm not sure to what extent the emergency powers will have on using some of these funds or tapping into other sources while awaiting appropriation of non-locally sourced funds. Um, but I think with the governor's emergency powers to be able to utilize all resources until such time the legislature can appropriate these funds to whether backfill or return some of the monies that were borrowed so that they can use it to address. But I think it's just for a matter of and if that was your intention, Vice Chair, is to just play a more active role and providing that extra check and balance to ensure that these funds are going to the intended purpose, rather than now with what finance is going through, scrambling through all records to see where the money was spent or where it was given to and how they spent it. It would be the legislature's role to say, let's give defense X amount of money, and let's give Homeland X amount of money, and then they'll be the expenditure authority and they'll be held accountable for how they spend those monies. But now, with not knowing how much really went to where and what are we expecting reimbursements, or you know, this would just provide that extra security and accountability over where these monies went and how they're spent. But it doesn't stop the legislature from holding emergency sessions too to address these issues in a timely manner and so with the governor's expenditure authority to be able to utilize currently general fund monies to address, that will give the legislature time and hopefully not too long to act on future appropriations of any non-locally sourced funds. So, recognize Senator Mendiola.
Actually, so Mr. Chair, I actually agree with you. No, in terms of the legislature playing an active role, I do agree absolutely. For added checks and balance, I do agree with that. Again, my only issue here is that, and with the authority of the governor lies that that emergency power, right, where you can just move funds just to respond. So I see where this is going, and I see how we're trying to make sure that the legislature plays an active role. No arguments there. It's really just making sure that if the House and the Senate is divided in terms of politics, that's where the challenge comes in, or the executive branch and the legislature. That's where the challenge really lies, and we've seen it in the past disasters, and I've seen the House and the Senate go at it in terms of how the money should be spent. And I imagine 20 House of Representative members with different constituents, different focus, different directions. I imagine 9 from the Senate just having different directions, and then the executive branch. I just imagine a more challenged decision-making ability there if we were to act as quickly. So again, I just raised that in that manner because I've seen it sitting in the executive branch where we're actually trying to move something, but then we're waiting for the House and Senate to actually agree on something. And sure, if it's an emergency, I'm sure everybody will act accordingly, as quickly as possible. But I just want to make sure that I put that out there so that we also take that into account and make sure that when we make this decision, it's not just because of an incident and then we shoot ourselves in the foot in the long term. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Mendiola. Any other discussion? Recognize Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And I do hear every single your sentiments, Senator Mendiola, and I do agree that can sometimes cause delay in a lot of the work that has to be done. Absolutely. where do we find the balance, right? It's not an easy task. I think that the intent of the bill was to really take proactive measures and ensure that there is uh, some checks and balances in place. And it wasn't just the like the ARPA money. Like we're just talking about the community chest fund. Like we don't even know where that money is and how it was spent, right? So though that we just want to take some accountability and make sure that we are informing our people with all, where all these monies are coming from and how we plan to spend them, and just make sure that we hold whoever the expenditure authority is accountable. So really, I do understand your sentiments completely, and I also agree that with you that in times of an emergency, I think I am hopeful and optimistic that the elected leaders will put all personal and political differences aside and work together to respond to an emergency. So just wanted to reiterate what both of you have already said. And, I don't know where to find a balance, but I for one, would rather have checks and balances in place and try to minimize. I know there's just no way to avoid, situations, but minimizing is definitely the objective here. So um, just wanted to add my 2 cents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I saw comments from Secretary of Finance, have not received anything back. I saw comments from the AG last term and this term, but have not received anything back. I don't see any other issues. I mean, we can address Senator Paul's concerns. And so, Council, again, the recommendation was to
Because the way it reads, it says all funds, but then it says very specific as to like federal funds from the U.S. Congress. Senator Paul's concern is there may be just like private corporations donating money to the government as part of their package investing in the Commonwealth, or they have sometimes they'll have cash community benefits. Was thinking maybe if it's cash donation should be if only if it exceeds a certain amount. Like, I mean, why should we bother if it's only like 5,000 or what I mean? It's just like, but the one for IPI community chest, that was a huge money.
Isn't there already a provision where anything in excess of 250,000 it has to come to the legislature for appropriation?
that's for
Were you
General funds.
Were
Right?
you reading that?
This is a discussion.
Oh,
So I'm just curious if that's
for
a true statement.
the supplemental budget.
Just supplemental budget. So would this be considered a supplemental budget if
No,
or-
because it's not general revenue. So we would just include on line 15. Furthermore, this shall apply to recognized Vice Chair.
Sorry, so just I guess it kind of provoked my thought, a question there. So it wouldn't be considered part of general funds if, let's say, a lease agreement was executed after the budget has been executed, and then the community funds came in later. Then that wouldn't require the executive branch to do a supplemental budget to report the excess.
If it's not money that would directly benefit the operations of the government, if I understand your question correctly. So like when you say lease agreement or like just the community
Yeah.
benefit fund in
Yeah.
general, so it's not meant for the general revenue
Oh,
for
okay.
operations. It's an agreement as a
anyways, DPO will probably just hold on to that until the end of the fiscal year, then
For
subtract
land,
all
okay,
their
yeah. If it's
operations
land,
and then,
land leases, then
okay,
yes.
never mind. Okay, sticking with.
Yeah, it will be based on the contractual language in the agreement, what it says.
Got it. Okay.
So that means it will be part,
Part of the,
almost guarantee it won't be part of the general fund.
okay. Okay. Thank you. I yield.
So going back to my thought, I guess it's adding language that would say furthermore, and then this is where we can put instances similar to a community benefit fund, right? So furthermore, any collections received from private entities in excess of, and this is where your recommendation, Senator Manila, comes in excess of 200,000 shall be or furthermore, these donations or contributions received from. Oh, but it's like, let's give 100,000 to Rhoda and then let's give the other one to you know what I mean? 100,000, yeah, it's minimal when you look at community benefit fund, right? But yeah, so it's like, well, in our current financial straits, right? It's a lot of money. Is that something, council, that we can address to ensure all? Just to clarify that these would include donations or contributions made by private entities.
Chair, will it also be okay to include operating transfers from other entities, like from autonomous entities, transferring some money to the general fund? Right? In some cases, they will give them a loan to that extent. Yeah.
No, because loans are already covered, right? We cannot go into debt unless the legislature approves.
Yeah. Like for example, just to bring up an issue with the YouTube, the 15 million loan, wouldn't that amount for the, remember the other one, the 25 million loan from Taco Bond, in anticipation of that bond, station bond, wouldn't that kind of funding be reported?
No, but like the YouTube, the 15 million, we had to approve that already.
Yeah, but I'm saying would that also be identified over here for appropriation to identify what expenses will be? I guess I was trying to capture all those kind of transactions that would have to be reported over to the legislature. That the administration has a judgment whether they want to report it or not. And that would be one example. A big amount of 25 million, financing the bond. But maybe the legislature will have to have a say so on how the funds will be used.
And that would be more of in the law that authorize the loan, like the 15 million. When we authorized it, it had to be there had to be specific purposes for the loan. But in this case, it's just similar to like how we would identify the loan. So it will be up to the legislature to identify how to spend these monies collected. Council, do you have the? So if we include that additional language on 101, should we just leave 102? I mean, we don't even have to put the word ARPA, right? Because by next year it's gone.
Yeah. You can leave it, but do you want to remove ARPA? Whereas by U.S. Council include all funds from the not listed, I guess they Give me an example.
Or remove all of that and wait, prior to submitting.
So prior to submitting. Yeah. See, that's where I was trying to twist my brain because it's kind of like putting a definition here when it's already in 101. So if we say prior to submitting any certification use of non-local funds report for the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands by the U.S. Congress, and maybe just delete all that.
No, I
part.
think we can take out 102, right? Because I think the intent of 102 was like ARPA, you had to submit a spending plan, but I think moving forward, we would still need to appropriate, and so the spending plan would be based on the law, which is the as amended. How about the your draft is different? Is that HS1? So prior to submitting any certification of use for non-locally sourced funds appropriated for the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands by U.S. Congress, comma, the governor shall submit a proposed certification to the House. Said proposal shall be timely submitted for passage. Okay, I'm okay with that. Okay. Yeah, so your numbering's kind of off, but okay. I move to strike out language starting on page 3, line 19 from 2, include all funds, all the way to page 4, line 1, with the bracket, the American Rescue Plan.
So moved.
All right, a motion was made and seconded. Any concerns with the motion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Further discussion. So I think the section 104 would, I know earlier prior to the meeting, I was asking council how would this affect one of the bill that's up for discussion, which is 2356. But again, it was clarified under the exemption on line 6, any funds provided directly to specific grantees under the terms and conditions of a federal grant or program, except when the CNMI governor or the CNMI office of the governor is a direct expenditure authority. Any additional concerns, members? All right, members. Sorry, before we go into further parts of the bill, if we can just go back to 101. There wasn't any. We didn't vote on any motion to make the change there. Um, And so at this time, I would like to offer a motion that we, starting on line 7 on page 3, with advice of council, we'll just move the language exclusive of general funds up to line 10, revenue. Just move that to the beginning of the paragraph and it'll read, and instead of exclusive, we'll just put the, replace that with except. So except the general fund or funds already subject to legislative appropriations such as locally sourced general or specific revenue, the term non-locally sourced funds shall mean all funds that directly or indirectly benefit the Commonwealth. So we're just moving that piece of language up and changing the word exclusive to except. And then on line 15, it's adding the additional language. Furthermore, all funds donated or contributed to the Commonwealth government from private entities shall be, or in excess of 200,000 shall be included. Can I get a second on the motion? All right, any objections to the motion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Any other concerns, members? In regards to violations, penalties? Five to 20 years is sufficient? No less than 5. If you touch $10, it's yeah. I don't think we should put the floor.
Just wanted to ask you something personally.
Yeah.
So I didn't see that. So I didn't see a lot of this bills from the house. I'm just curious. Like when you look at the review by, I think that was an anonymous with the legal counsel, but in the house it's always reviewed by the legal. Like for example, yeah, so like for example, here review for legal questions.
If you should amend the floor, 5 years is, I mean, depending on how much they. Right.